So we're finally at the recessive video. This is the third video of the genetics, explaining ball python genetics. This will not be the final video, but today we're discussing recessive genes. So recessives are completely different to codominant and dominant mutations. With recessives, both parents need to carry the gene in order to reproduce the same animal or the visual recessive in the near future. So both animals might not visually represent the gene, but it is carrying the gene. So if you breed those two animals to each other, you've got the chance of reproducing the visual animal. So we're going to show you guys again some practical examples of how recessive works. So let's start it off. Here we've got a pied ball python, and this is actually my favorite all-time gene, and I think it will stay forever. When I was younger, I used to keep a normal pair of ball pythons until one day I saw a pied ball python, and that's really where my fascination started with actually breeding and the genetics of the animals itself. So here we've got, like I said, a plain pied ball python, and then here we've got a normal ball python. So what happens if I breed a visual pied to a normal ball python? We're actually going to end up with a clutch that looks like normal ball pythons, but all of them will be carrying the gene of the pied. So even though they're not visually representing the gene, they are carriers of the gene, and in the future, if you pair again with them, you will get pieds out of the clutch. So let's say, for instance, you breed a pied to a normal and you get a clutch full of het pieds, and you take two of those babies and you breed them back to each other, or you breed two het pieds back to each other, you'll get 1 out of 4 pieds, 1 out of 4 should be het pied, and 2 out of 4 should be 66% het for pied. But the thing is, with this being a head-to-head pairing, all of the babies that is non-visual or non-pieds will be classified as 66% heads, because we won't be able to tell the difference between a het pied and a 66% het pied or a normal ball python. So if you breed two het pieds to each other, you get the chance of producing a pied 1 out of 4, and all of the other babies will be classified as 66% het pieds until you actually breed them and prove them out to be carriers of the pied gene. So what happens if I breed a pied ball python to a het pied ball python? So 50% of the babies should be pieds, and 50% of the babies should be 100% het for pieds. So it's quite straightforward. But in order to reproduce pieds, one of the animals, or actually both of the animals, need to carry the gene. So in the future, if you breed a pied to a het pied, it's quite basic and simple. All of the babies should be 100% het pied, bare minimum. And if you have good odds, you will have 50% or more pieds. Or if you have bad odds, it can go either side. Okay, so here we've got a normal ball python, and here we've got a het pied ball python. So what happens if we breed these two animals to each other? So if we breed them to each other, all will be looking like the normal, but they will be 50% het for pied. So the thing is, let's say you get a clutch of 6 eggs, all of the babies will be classified as 50% het pieds, but some of them will prove out to be carrying the pied gene. But because one of the parents wasn't visually representing the animal, you can't say which animal will prove out to be 100% het pied. So everything then is just classified as 50% het pied until they prove out to be a het pied animal itself. Then the last step is when you breed pied to pied, what are we going to get? So because both animals are visual pieds, the whole clutch will be pieds. So the nice thing about pieds, they do differ to each animal. So for instance, these two animals are, I'd say, between 80 and 90% white, but you can get a pied which has got no white saddles or very little white saddles. So that's a great thing about ball pythons in general. They're so diverse, and I really think in the future, line breeding is going to make a huge difference. And that's another video we're going to do in the future, about talking about line breeding of ball pythons and does it play a role.